Welcome back. This is the end of it. Sacred Mountain, living with CTE in the Wild West. All right. Let's just get to it. Chapter 20, Conclusion. In this autobiography, I've shared the experience of the last 20 years of my life. I have expounded on both my inner thoughts and hidden knowledge, by letting you see how I have forged through tough times to this beginning of a new journey. Let's recap a few things. All right. Aliens are real, and there are at least a few different species. I included them cell phone shots as proof. Also, if you're in need of more proof, probing is done to stimulate the prostate for unwilling collection of sperm. Nice word for unpleasant process. Ghosts are real, and it's a really sad thing when the departed can't move on. We are all powerful spirits, and when we leave, if it's not okay with our passing or unaware of our divinity, then humans tend to get stuck, hence them ghosts. You can visit the ghost town at Bodfish and take the tour for yourself. Hear our story in other words and see them famous Tinker, Trike Bell, and Kids Rocking Chair. When a spirit speaks to me, that's not family visiting. I let them know that instead of being banished, why don't they move on? Us spiritual beings get more than one life to live. If you're an asshole, go find out who you really are, who you were in past lives. Move on. There is no judgment. The only hell is what guilt we are hung up on, of our own making. Fear, guilt, sin, all used for control in life and torment in death. The not-so-secret of anti-gravity is covered in the chapter on UFOs. Even drew me a diagram, which I did not include in the taping here. So if you buy the book, you can see that. The super silly right in everyone's face, especially us old folks who have taken physics, answer the entire world's energy needs, both fuel and electric. It's all covered in one short chapter. The truth behind our entire toxic environment is exposed, from vaccines to sugar. The evil aspect of all those so-called rulers, the little ones in charge who want you to believe they are separate from each other, the ones who allow war, poverty, drug abuse, toxic poisoning, and true suffering put on us humans to keep us stupid as a species, who encourage bloodletting and the sacrifice of the innocent, especially children, the ones who want us all to take a knee. A full 20 years of blessed life was covered, full of pain, struggle, abduction, discovery, and fortitude, driven by an emerging family's love. The rite of passage to live in the mountains, the modern day Old West, full of shootouts, bears, lions, and tweakers. All of this while battling with CTE, brain damage caused by a former lifetime of football. The struggle to live with it daily and the incredible techniques used in overcoming the damage to a state of empowered enlightenment and comfort. The core truth of the Kabbalah and how the angels of Mother Earth control elemental aspects of our lives, such as breathing, walking, talking, allowing us spiritual souls to live as beings. Why do we fast? To give the angels a break in food digestion so they can work miracles in our lives. If the knowledge of angelic mobilization of the body doesn't make you feel full of spiritual power, if knowing that you as an individual spirit is so special that every day you receive all the blessings of Mother Earth and her angels to live doesn't connect you, if the knowledge that the divinity of the female aspect of the Creator has been left out of society for control doesn't inspire you, if the encouraging truth that our society can be a utopia with free energy and extra long life through natural balance doesn't calm you, if you're not called to arms because this man-made system is in place to keep us as humans, as slaves, always working, never allowed the opportunity to meet our own needs as individuals, we are a number in a system that treats us like cattle. If that isn't enough to inspire you and get you fired up, then I will say this. It brings it back to this, and it's not just because I'm a bud smoker. That song, Get Up, Stand Up, is sung by so many, but not even my own family understands the inner words. Old Bob Marley gave the big secret up back then. I figured that's why his life was so short. In the middle of that song, call to spiritual awakening and self-righteousness, was the truth of the whole world. Almighty God is a living man. This is realized if you study long enough. We don't suffer here alone. Our living spirit, embodied by magic to breathe, eat, and digest, walk, talk, and think. All a magical process, but don't forget, there can be no King of Kings without the Queen. We're going to get to that. All humans are born divine, a living perspective of God. Please go look at yourself and see the spark of divinity within. Find enlightenment. Feel the divine spark within your own being. Understand we are so important that they are willing to poison and kill us, trick and enslave us. So important that a group of angels works endlessly for our health. So important that other species from other worlds are willing to travel here to examine us. So powerful that after life our spirit is subject to nothing but our own will. So special that the fabric of creation brought you to read this book or listen to this broadcast deal. I don't know what you call this thing here. I tell you that you're not just loved, but part of a divine kingdom, if you accept it. The entire energy of the Creator would never want any of you to take a knee, ever. We are the divine. We are the magi. See the divinity within. When you do, I would really enjoy having a smoke session with you and hearing about your adventures. I had this here burned for me because I love it. Let me read that. Oh, is it backwards on the camera or is that my brain? Find enlightenment, see the divinity within, and then the symbol of creation. Love that. Gotta love that, right? Okay. And moving on. Whew. Peace be with you. So that was how I was going to leave this. But then today happened. That was me trying to write a conclusion. We don't end like that. Come on. It started out as a good day, I think. We are now moving to our new house. No shower yet, but we are by no means roughing it. I had spent most of the day doing Hot Wheels Super Track with my boys, Brighton and Corbin. I do have to back it up a week or so. I have been getting them chest pains in the evening and have been unable to shake it. The tightening goes up my neck and down my arm. Okay, back to this afternoon. I had it in my mind that I wanted to treat this plate like a vacation for myself instead of a job. So with that in mind, I was going to have Wendy drive us to get some dinner and she didn't have to go to a big grocery store shopping. Then we could check out the art studio and maybe I was lucky outdoor shower. It is interesting how intentions can get all screwed up. We headed to Kernville and the timing wasn't so good. I'm on the oil clock, so if I am out past 5 p.m., it wasn't the best. I had figured it would be about 3:30 or 4. I was starting to feel bad and asked Wendy to pull over so I could smoke one. I did, and I mentioned to Wendy my intentions of the art studio visit and dinner plans to avoid shopping was the reason for the little trip. While talking, I noticed the time because of the oil clock. It is to the minute, so weird. Too late for the art studio, so we decided to drive through some homes and then headed to the store. This is normal behavior and considered fun for most real estate folks. So while driving through the homes, Wendy started to tell me a story about something not important or important enough to remember. But while telling me, she did some long pauses, which is a great storyteller. It has a dramatic way of talking. It makes her great at many things, but is a problem for my brain. I tried to explain this was a problem. This is where the book takes a dramatic twist. Wendy and I were by no means perfect. In fact, we fight probably more than most. She wanted me to write the reality that living with me is horrible. I am apparently aggressive. We knew that. Not nice, name calling, mean. Say words like bitch and get away. I'm an asshole, I guess. If a gal is a bitch female dog, then is that better or worse than an asshole? There is a question not to ponder. I actually don't know how I can find humor after today, except to say us funny people are only laughing on the outside. I think I sold that one from the Joker, but quite true. One question I did raise tonight: if I'm so bad by cursing and I'm so a sick retard, then what is your excuse? I also have to say that with CTE, if you get pushed away or told to leave me alone, I would think that in itself is kind. Anyways, I'm sure our life is not so sounds so good from the neighbor's point of view. To hell with them. Who cares about the crypt keeper anyways? To say that my letting her know this was a problem wasn't accompanied by pain and later a seizure would not be true. Many causes I figure now because I do love Wendy. However, my only real complaint with her is her defensiveness. So that gets us into heated times, usually ending with me by myself by choice to avoid seizures or inflicting damage to home and family. Hulk syndrome. Meeting my maker. After reading this far, you should know that I'm a pretty strange person. I like to say mutant now for fun. Not zombie anymore after today. Not now zombie after today, but that was a good one. On the way back from the failed attempt at smoking and going for a drive, we went past the grocery store. Winnie did suggest we head to the lake to smoke, but I was upset at the time, back and forth. This is when I had a strong seizure. It wasn't a fun one because I was shaking and moving too much and she didn't really notice. After a long time with no breath, I gasped. Then it was more upset. I was getting near to Sacred Mountain River Suites, and I looked up to see Wendy starting to wave at this white truck. The day before, she did wave at the same white truck. Both days she was infuriated when I asked who it was. However, I am sure my inflection sounded mean. The wave, though, was a start to wave, then noticed then something pulling the handbag. It is playing over in my mind now, and it's odd. However, we wave on the mountain, and it's only been 2 years. However, what are the chances that some white truck would get an accidental wave? Wendy said it was a truck, a tan truck and a white truck, whatever. I got dropped off at the River Suites. On the way back, I did say to Wendy to drop me off, trying to get away from the energy in the car. When we arrived at the River Suites, I told Wendy I would be smoking now on the balcony and she could join me. I got out of the Jeep and she left, and a little taken back, and I waved a weird wave as she left, a wave of confusion. Then about 5 minutes went by and all this started to hit me. It was so much for her, you know who I am. I'm not going to badmouth my wife. I will say that time I certain she was cheating on me. All of the oh yeahs and that she did that by hitting my damaged brain. Thought of all this BS and all the feelings that I wasn't getting quite what I was giving. Thoughts of being a retard now and not bad it must be for my wife. Now I thought I guess I'm getting exactly what I was giving. Not fun to be sick. It hurts everyone, but I do have to say I'm tired of hearing how bad it is for them around me. It sucks to be me, not because I don't have it all, but because for my entire charmed life I wasn't allowed to feel joy. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, not even probably that one guy. I could feel the pain hitting my chest, this time way worse and intense. I was looking down at where the Jeep pulled out and was feeling so hopeless. My chest was pounding so hard I could feel my heart on the outside. It hurt and I felt worst dry mouth that I have ever experienced. I texted Wendy several times questioning. I then was calling for help. I left the River Suite saying out loud, if this is it, then I want to spend my last moments with my boys. I walked or stumbled next door. My left arm was clenching my chest. I couldn't stop it from beating. So hard, like the Alien movie right before the thing explodes out. I get to the door and the boys. I have Aiden try to get a hold of Wendy. I let them know I may need an ambulance. I call my mother in tears and immense pain and got her to do 2 things. Publish this book if I die. I also found out today that the publisher I use is very expensive. Second was to call me an ambulance. It was going down without trying to get some oxygen. I wasn't going down without trying to get some oxygen. In the past, it has helped. I have had trouble like oxygen help a lot. I was waiting for the ambulance and for about 30 and started to feel myself calm down. It's ironic. I was grabbing my phone to call my mother again and cancel the ambulance. As Wendy arrived, she was pretty intense. I yelled she was a cheating bee. She yelled back. It was still on the phone with my mother. Now by this time the chest pain is times 3 from where it was. Instead of asking to cancel, I hung up. Wendy yelled at me that they would make me go to a hospital. Was she trying to get rid of me for a while? Maybe. Was that their protocols now? Probably. The last time I got oxygen from an ambulance, they refused to ride to the hospital because I was then okay. So at the time, it was a threat to me. I started walking to the front of the building by the restaurant and the ambulance showed up. They pulled up with this heavy fire department. The same losers that let my hat ranch burn down. I pointed at the fire truck and growled. I did growl. Then yelled, "Get those sons of bitches out of here." Wendy then comes towards me and says, "They won't give you oxygen unless you go to the hospital." I point at the ambulance driver and say, "There is no way I'm going to the hospital." I said, "All I want is oxygen." I yelled and pleaded, "I'll give you $5,000 right now for oxygen." No one said anything to me, but the two from the ambulance started to approach me. On my end, it was creepy, and there was no way I was getting in that ambulance or leaving my property. I already let Wendy know if I die, it's going to be here at home. As they headed toward the gate, I was standing up and pointed again at them and said, "You're trespassing. Get the F out of here, and I'm not paying for you if you leave." I am proud to say I meant it. I left walking, clutching my chest, headed for the back of the property. I knew even if they call the cops on me, they can't do anything to me on my own property, so I headed to the back of the property. My intention was to head up the mountain for a hike on our own land. What kind of a world have we created where if you call for help, you're treated like a criminal, and if you're a criminal cooking meth, you're treated with rights? WTF means what the F. As I reached the back gate, I focused on our magical circle we're making and entered, clutching my chest, moaning and saying to the heavens, "If this is my time, I will either take the throne or we're going to have some words." In my mind for days, I've been thinking, what kind of a creator would allow such suffering? What kind of creator would allow any of this shit to happen to us humans? Anyways, referencing what old Bob said above the answer, the secret, I was about to witness all of it. I exited the circle. I hiked up the hill a bit to get away from Wendy. As I left, she was sure to point to the gate and the dogs, so I shut it on the way up. That's odd, right? Maybe I just perceived that. I headed up the hill just a bit to a point where I was able to see our lunar totem pole. It sits above the Sacred Mountain River Suites sign. River Suites, not the sign. That was my destination. If there was ever a throne carved into a rock, it was that rock that sits next to the lunar totem. Each step that I took was difficult. It was a steep little path, and I had to concentrate for each step. I was clenching my heart, which was jumping from my chest. My vision was going in and out. The pain then went. I was numb. I reached the lunar totem and used it to pivot over to the boulder throne. I sat there for my mind was a minute. Then the entire minute I was feeling the life drain from me. I felt relief watching from above as the ambulance and fire truck left. I couldn't help but lay back. I am not the kind to lay back on anything, not even a bed, so to lean back on a boulder and not feel anything was an odd sensation. I can remember laying there feeling really no pain at this point, only this weird serenity. My head was balanced on a fist-sized rock at the back of the boulder. I can remember again thinking how odd that was. And just then, it was as if time stopped. I say that because I lost the feeling in my body and lost the ability to move. My head then rolled to the right, and I was now facing the lunar totem. Unable to move anything, just staring at the totem stuck between life and death. I can remember saying many things, however, I don't think words were coming out. So I don't really know how I was talking. I have to ponder that. So I say, what is this? Where are my relatives? I heard you relatives hook you up when you go. I was just stuck waiting. I must have been a full 3 minutes, and I say again in a choice then. Still stuck between worlds, nothing moving. This morning I was contemplating pictures from this book. I looked through 20 years of photos and could now see everyone flashing by a full life of memories. They were good, happy memories. However, that is when I realized that I could win the lotto and not feel joy. Damn brain. I then say, where is my grandmother? I called Grammy. She and my boys are the only ones who have ever shown me unconditional love. I then see all these images of my boys. They are the best, so smart, so strong, and so loving. I had an image of my grandmother and many flashing images of times I had spent with her. How much she meant to me, and I could feel and I could be for how much she meant to me and what I could be for my boys. I then say I choose life. If I have a choice, I choose life for my boys. I say again, I choose life for my boys. I then said all 4 of them. I then heard my grandmother say, just like Rocky movies, get up because Grammy loves you. I couldn't move. I couldn't move anything. I heard again, get up because Grammy loves you. I asked, how can't I can't move. I was just dead. Then I could feel something in my face. It was a fly. I could feel a fly. Then it flew away. Then a minute later, I was back, crawling all over my petrified face. Then the last time I heard, get up, you son of a bitch, because your Grammy loves you. Just like the Rocky movie. At that moment, I could move my head. It was like sitting up, well, like a zombie. I felt my body rise even though I could not feel any of my body. I rose up the hill. I took about 3 steps up the hill, and that was when things really got weird. In the west, the sky opened. There was a throne of heaven. Excuse me. It is really that, a big chair. There was a being atop it. It looked at this end, of course. I looked at this and, of course, reacted like myself. Now I am speaking out loud. I can again talk, move, and feel. I am now walking and talking with his kingdom in the sky. I could say to this so-called creator, if you're there and I'm here out here, then I should kick your ass. What kind of a God are you? What would you do? Why would you let this world suffer? I was reminded in my mind of the reason we have this world game. Unbalanced, shitty people are not cool. They have to be weeded out. That's a stupid reason to cause suffering. I get it, but how dare you? I then turned my back to that throne. I then hear a voice that I didn't expound any sort of presence. You dare turn your back on the throne of God? I then responded, I'd rather face hell than live on a knee. I then pivoted back to the throne and said, if you're the king, then where's your queen? Just then I swear I felt the heavens giggle. Her presence came from behind the throne. All life comes from the womb. All creation comes from her. She's the darkness from which all light and matter was birthed. This includes all of us. The creator may be a dude, but his creator was her. She said something to this herald on the throne. I don't know what, but the vibe was serious but happy. She was definitely in charge, but allowing this being to play as the creator. I told him I would not finish our book if me or any of my people would ever ask to take a knee, and I wanted my health back. Then I hear the voice again say, you dare? I then replied, no, it's blackmail. Welcome to Earth. Fucking crazy. I didn't realize he was a herald until after, when I was asked myself, why did I act like that? Of course, then I was immediately brought back to the secret of all creation. The creator, the masculine aspect of God, isn't a complete asshole. He has not been allowing us all to suffer. He surely didn't allow his son to be sacrificed. That was him. He doesn't walk with us. He is one of us, experiencing this silly world with us over and over. Does that give you comfort? I had talked recently about the name of God. That female aspect of the creator introduced herself to me as Freda. You can't pronounce it, but it's funny. I didn't see if you thought of the movie Thor. That energy has no equal. It's not all the power that you feel, but the goodness. She said I'm a bit of an asshole, though. She also told me to tell Wendy hi. The yin-yang symbol above, she's the black part. I think she is why Wendy is so tough. I see her power within Wendy. Freda resides along with the creator within us all. Find the love of those two, Freda and the creator, in every aspect of creation. The symbol above is the symbol of their love, like Kung Fu Panda 3, the world of creation within every living thing. Their symbol is the cross made during the eclipse when the sun and moon perfectly align. The symbol or name is also the 6-pointed star, which is the triangle and the inverted triangle. They are one. is what we learn, and others say they are love. Excuse me. I never understood how God could be love until I met her. And now I know that unconditional love can exist for us all if we can see the divinity within each other. Who is that little man God? I will give you this one hint, although it probably won't help. The crown that isn't being worn looks to be made of white gold when you look at it one way, and it's covered in feathers eyes if you look from a different shimmer. If I had to vote and it wasn't for myself, I would go for, of course, Bob Marley. But he passed, so maybe one from the band Steel Pulse. They're really great, and I've smoked out with them on stage. Elvis is dead too, right? No, I'm not so sure. No, I don't think anybody knows. Is he really dead? How about you? When religion becomes reality, whose side will you be on? Now I can stop my teary-eyed bullshit. Here's the lunar totem here on the side of the mountain. If you come and stay at Sacred Mountain River Suites in Kernville, you can look right at the lunar totem all night long. That's everything I have to give. A full book of life. I am now 44 years old, and full 20 of them are inside. No. Oh, was that a good religious ending? Jeez. Get rid of that. So, any good story needs a better ending than that. You know, dying and coming back's fun, though. I'm a zombie now. Ooh. Was that a good religious ending? Third time's the charm. Number 3. We live in a real world with real world consequences. Did I take too much oil yesterday afternoon? It could cause heart problems if you take too much. Was I just tripping out? I'll let you decide. I did intend on ending with that, as it was such a powerful experience. However, after today, the very next day, everything was brought full circle in my face. It sure is obvious that the world is a man-made mess. I spent the night alone after the accusations of infidelity, which I sure are unfounded, and the heart attack, which I'm sure I had. Waking, I was longing for my wife. I waited the entire morning for her to show. I was over there alone with nothing to take my oil. With major problems arise, I understand that my family needs time away from me to reset. So I figured when my first oil time of 10 came around, when Wendy was still really upset about her prior day's circumstances with the fire department and ambulance and my apparent death. I would say it was about 10:45 or 11 when she came into the upper unit where I was hiding out. I wasn't super happy that she was there so late, but she had coffee. A kind gesture of coffee made it to my lips. Only agony was expressed from that point. Wendy let me know that she was handing me the coffee why she was there so late. She met the propane guy earlier in the AM and there was a leak. She then had the boys digging up the entire water and propane line in the back of the house to find the leak. I now know that she was doing her best to help. I'm, on the other hand, instantly started wailing. Hands clenching my brain as I was wailing in pain, instantly processing that I knew right where the problem was, instantly flashing images as one of the spots in the line that I was told everyone would be the problem if there was a problem, because that was the only part that was old, and also I unearthed it just a bit. All of this hitting my brain at the same time, and images of feeling of 2 days I spent me just to cover the trench the last time, silting and making sure there was no rocks, took forever. I was headed out of the door, and when he was telling me, "Oh no, don't go, it's okay," I yelled and moaned at the same time that it wasn't okay, they're digging up my house. Pushing by Wendy at the door, I headed towards the street. I was clenching my chest again in a panic, pushing my legs and moving in the jog. However, I was only able to mobilize a quick walk. The entire time I am wailing in pain. I am big and I have a big voice, so I am sure it sounded horrible. Early in the book, I told the tale of the crypt keeper. She and some old elderly drunk ladies live in a set of riddles in between our new home and the western town of the hotel suites. Other than the crypt keeper, we have also had trouble with people in that building treating our lives happening on both sides of them like a reality show. We've actually heard one of them say that they're excited to hear Aiden learn German. That was when Wendy realized that every word of our lives was on display for these elderly. Aiden had discussed taking German at the dining room table the day before. For 2 years now, ever since our fire, we had been living in a hotel and being judged by the drunks next door. I could only imagine how much they hated me and the disease. I was about to find out what wailing and pain can bring you. I rounded the corner at the western town and proceeded through the gate. I was yelling as soon as I opened the gate to stop digging. Stop digging. Effing stop. I then tell you to Wendy, are you trying to kill me? Of course, this is reference to the job. However, that was all the ammunition these bastards next door needed. After my heart attack the day before, they must have been looking for an excuse to mess with me. I got to the house and was in full-blown panic attack. I yelled again to stop, had to scream to get them to listen and actually stop. I then said the problem is right here. Why? Grabbing my head in agony, I yelled, why wouldn't anyone say anything? I then looked to the north and noticed the entire back of the home had been retrenched, exposing all the water, waste, and gas lines. I went from a panic attack to a minor Hulk moment, and I grabbed a step stool and threw it at the ground. Winnie then said, don't hurt the kids, which was BS, and after the day before, I just walked back to the hotel, back to my escape at the second floor. I was grabbing my head and moaning on the way back. I got back to the air suite and was only really gone about 5 real minutes. That's when, in my mind, the biggest surprise, only 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes, right? In only 5 minutes, while on the phone with my mama, in just 5 little minutes, the silence of the air suite was interrupted by the wail of sirens. I was actually in a state of shock. I headed to the door and stepped down to the balcony. I was standing there with my cell phone in my right hand, and I'm sure my jaw dropped to the floor. There wasn't just one cop pulling in the front of the hotel. It was 5 tiny little minutes before 10 were there, 4 cop cars, and 1 federal ranger in a truck. The sheriffs were there in full force, and they pulled up and took the typical defensive positions of their car. It took but a second or two for them to all stop, making a car blockade the driveway and arise from their vehicle with guns drawn. As they are then pulling their weapons, I yelled down, what are you all doing here? For me? I then noticed one of the officers was a really cool 410 shotgun assault rifle. You know, the one that has a clip and is a semi-auto. Pretty heavy-duty firepower for me being loud. The officer then said, why don't you come down and talk? The guy was a smaller guy and definitely had an attitude with his demands. I said, okay, sir, I am on the phone with my mother and you can wait a second. I then told my mama that if I was being arrested and to stay on the phone. I headed down the stairs, and by the time I got 50 feet down from the officers, they were ordering me to turn around, put my hands in the air. I asked why. I stated I've done nothing wrong. I then told them I could not be asked to lay down or I would have a seizure. I asked them to just sit and talk with me and motion to the chairs outside the Earth Suite. They thought it better to treat me like I was a murderer. Then he had yelled, get to my knees. I repeated I would have a seizure if I get on the ground. They repeated to get on my knees. They were all 5 pointing guns at me. However, I was just fixated on the street sweeper, the one cop had, semi-automatic shotgun. These dudes were packed for war, and I was the enemy, at least at first. The day before, I proclaimed after awakening from my death sleep, I'd never take a knee. My people will never take a knee. The throne accepts us this way, wants us this way, to be real gems in the sand. Special, individual, powerful. That is what we have allowed to be created in our names. That's the world that threatens death and imprisonment if you don't get on your knees. I choose life for my boys, and I was now taking a knee to preserve the life I choose just the day before. Full circle. It was uncomfortable to get down on the asphalt. I am now 275 pounds, and that's a lot to get down on the ground. It is a blessing that I lost over 60 pounds giving up sugar. If I hadn't, I doubt I would have survived the uncalled for encounter. I say uncalled for, but it is obvious now that the neighbors definitely made sure all of this was called for. They reported that someone said they were being killed. They also told the sheriff that I was threatening and dangerous. I say you're killing me with stress, so easy to twist things. As soon as a second knee hit the ground, two of the officers were handcuffing me. Because to them, the word of a tweaker drunk elderly lady is worth 5 officers and a street sweeper shotgun. But our call about a meth lab, that wasn't worth any response. Interesting, right? The handcuffs were applied very tight. As soon as they went on, I was left on my knees, and then the first seizure hit. I don't piss my pants, so they call them pseudo seizures. Who cares what kind of stupid doctor calls? Stupid doctor calls pain? I was shaking and got the words out. This is a seizure, you. I told you. I stopped after a minute. They then got me up and walked me to the sheriff's car. I asked, why are you arresting me? I didn't do anything wrong. They said, we weren't arresting you. I said, why do I have to get in your car then? He replied he was working with me by not making me lie face down on the asphalt, and I needed to work with them. They pushed me in the car, not hard, but forced. I sat. They then closed the door on me. I can't take that. I couldn't breathe. Then started seizure 2. I seized about 3 to 4 times in the sheriff's car. They were walking around talking. Then about 5, the 5th seizure started and then hit the chest pains. I then screamed to the sheriffs, you're killing me, my heart. I yelled for help. I immediately requested oxygen. The one officer opened the door, put the air on, and said, there, you're fine now, the air is on. He walked around the car. I was yelling for help. I then decided in my mind that this is instant. The ambulance was the only way I was getting help or out of that car. I yelled as loud as I could, get me an ambulance. Why was I in here? While seizing, I felt my right cuff spin on my wrist. I finally got one of the officers to have the first sanity in the situation. Officer Adame opened the car door and allowed me to sit with my legs out. That was a big help and diffused what was going to be another heart attack. I then was able to have a chat with Officer Adame and also the very accusational, very judgmental, very unprofessional, full of fear, Officer Sustenko. Name changed in grace. He asked about my mother on the phone. I said I am talking to her when they pulled up. I said she lives in Chino and she could get me. I then told them she was 3 hours away though. I explained to Officer Drame that I was a former county guy, general service, and I had a real estate agent that brought the sheriff's training facility lease to the board. I was a good guy. Why was I being treated this way? Officer Sustenko was sure to quickly question me about everything in my life. In a stern voice, he said, how long did you work for the county? I said, 3 years. He said, why did you leave? I said, I told you that backstabbing head of... I said, I told that backstabbing head of the county jerk to go F himself. Then I marched out of the building with my head high. Politics, you know. I then let him know how ridiculous this all was and how wrong it was for the Kern County Sheriff refused to respond to an active methamphetamine lab within multiple players, but had me locked up in the back of a car in front of my business for moaning too loud. Officer Sustenko then asked about my hotel and occasionally asked if I owned the hotel and house. I said yes, well, with my parents. Mr. Sustenko then said, why aren't you living in the house yet then? I said we didn't have enough money after the fire to buy a nice house, so I've spent a year working on this shithole next door. Officer Sustenko then took me through the are you on drugs? Do you drink? And then he accused, then was accusation about no medication except cannabis for my seizures. This guy. I kept addressing him as sir, but I wanted to just call him an asshole. He then pulled that if you have nothing to hide, can we look in the hotel? I said, sure, just let me out of this car. He walked away, and you know my approval of that search was being let out of the car? That didn't happen. This little man who claims to be a veteran officer let his fear of me control him in the beginning and then use my detention to assert himself as an authority over me and my wife. What a little guy. I'm sure Officer Seiko is a new soul, like a child, but really a grown man. In my true nature, I of course had to let them know I was writing a book. I actually did chuckle to the officers and said, what an ending. When the ambulance arrived, Officer Zitsenko let me know they were arriving with the fire department. I said, please bring me oxygen, but keep the fire department away. Those bastards lets my ranch burn down. Officer Zitsenko said he would keep the firemen back. The ambulance crew got me and were attempting to check my oxygen. There was a lot of pain coming from my wrists, and I started to seize when they were getting at my fingers for the O2 test. The pain was from the fractured wrist. I tend to fracture my right wrist every few years, old college injury. I didn't know it at the time, but just knew that the right cuff was way too tight. I then lucked up to see Officer Sustainjo march the two fire captains right over to my window and left them standing there looking at me, talking about me, laughing only 10 feet from the car. Officer Adame then showed me a second sign that he was a good soul. He loosened the handcuffs. I was finally in a state that was manageable. While I was still fighting to stay calm, now I was using my brain. Now I was using what brain was left to figure a way out of the car. The ambulance medic said that he couldn't give oxygen without a ride to the hospital. In that instant, I knew the day before the ambulance protocol. I knew that the day before was actual ambulance protocol, and that was pleasing to know. I was there with Officer Adami for quite a time while Officer Sustenko and his friends searched the place, and then later I learned also searched my other two places, my car, and even Wendy's purse. While I was with Officer Adami, Wendy was at the edge of our property speaking with the ranger who pulled us over when we first moved to town, an officer named Turner. Turner did most of the questioning. They were asking how long I was sick, how often I have episodes. They also asked if I take medication. They asked if I take drugs or drink. And after all of that, Sustenko then approached Wendy. Her first question was, "Is he really writing a book?" Wendy responded, "Yes, he is." Then asked if I was taking medication. Wendy responds, "He takes cannabis oil and as the only thing that lets him speak, and a tranquilizer that helps him that he takes, but he doesn't like to take it." Officer Sustenko then questioned Wendy about why I don't take any other seizure medication. Wendy then schooled Sustenko about seizure medication and how it's made for epilepsy and not for people with brain injuries and can exacerbate my symptoms. Sustenko then walked back to me. Turner then said to Wendy, "Where are your kids? We heard there are 4, and where are they?" He said we need to make sure they're okay. Wendy then walked the two officers to the back house and introduced them to the boys. The boys were were very polite. They said they wanted to make sure their kids were okay and there were no guns. Wendy was talking about the house, and Armstrong made a statement about how nice the house looked compared to the last time he saw it when the drug dealer tenant lived there. They looked around the house a bit and then were satisfied. They went out by the dogs and commented, "We have good, calm dogs." They then asked if I hit Wendy, how often we fight, if the kids hear us fight. Wendy stopped them and explained that she has boundaries. She wanted to hear anything about domestic violence. She ended her last marriage with a knockout blow. She raised her fist to show the scar where she knocked the last guy's teeth out. The officer then said, "Okay, put those weapons down." As they were walking out, Armstrong let Turner know that they were good people and that we were good people and that he had pulled us over when we first moved to town. No issues, no warrants. He let us off. Now Wendy was near the front of the place and approaching me at the scene. As she neared Sustenko, then approached her, he said, "Did he really work for the county?" Wendy replied, "Yes, he did for a few years, but he didn't fit in because he wasn't corrupt." He then asked Wendy about domestic violence and medication. Wendy said, "You seem shocked that every question you ask about him, I confirm yes." Sustenko then said, "I'm just trying to assess his mental health." Wendy then replied, "Are you a doctor?" He said, "No, my job is to make sure people's health and safety are okay." He then said, "Are you willing to take him to a hospital?" Wendy replied, "Yes, if he's willing." Yesterday, he didn't want to go. Sustenko then walked away from Wendy. When Officer Sustenko got back to me at the car's edge with the ambulance medic at my side, he stood there, looked at me, and said, "Are you willing to take the ambulance?" Through this entire thing, the senior officer was overblowing everything and then delaying in allowing me treatment or release with no respect for my safety or the pain he was inflicting on me. Just a little guy getting joy out of asserting authority. Said to Officer Sustenko, "Sir, I would rather go inside my hotel." He then replied louder, "Are you taking the ambulance?" I then said, "Sir, I cannot answer your question till you answer mine. I would rather go inside. If I'm not under the arrest, will you let me go inside?" He stood there enduring me as if I didn't say anything. I then said, "Look, you stood the firefighters right here in front of me and I kept my cool." I repeated, "Will you let me go in my hotel?" He just stood there looking at me like he didn't have an answer for me. And he never did. Was this guy going to hold me until my mother drove up from Chino Hills 3 hours away? After a long silence, I then said in a loud voice, "Yes, I'm taking the ambulance." I then looked at Officer Stako in the eye and said real loud so everyone, including the neighbors, could hear, "Looks like I'm going to spend $5,000 to get out of this car." I was escorted to the ambulance, and as I was walking, I was sure to look at the names of the officers and repeat them out loud. I looked at Officer Donnelly and told him, "Bless you, you're a good soul, and thank you." There was that Ranger Armstrong that was standing in the background, and I said something encouraging to him, I think. As I walked to the ambulance, I pointed at my phone in the hood and said, "Give me my phone to my wife." Of course, Officer Sesteko made a fuss about me being cuffed in the ambulance. He was demanding it, saying it was for the safety of the ambulance crew. When did I become a monster? The ambulance crew actually laughed. The ranger stepped forward and offered to escort the ambulance to the hospital so that I could travel without handcuffs. He was a good guy. I was finally out of the clutches of that idiot. One of the sheriffs took my phones and Officer Adame returned it later. I had heard they do that illegally. They do illegal cell phone searches. Guess that was another one to chalk up to Officer Sustenko. The ambulance ride was awesome. My oxygen level was at 100%, but who's to say what is normal percentage? Also, if my brain gets less blood, then more than 100% O2 seems to help. Once the O2 was flowing, I was feeling better. Talking to the medic was great. I can remember the dude's name, I can't remember, but he's really cool. He's my age and rides a skateboard. So sick that anyone can balance on one of them things. Even more so if you're my age, 44 and a fourth. It's a cool thing was chatting with him about our kids. I can't remember his name, but he was so proud of his kids. There's the boy who is a skateboarder, sponsored, and they ride together. I had to bring up my nephew AJ, who used to do skating like that. It was a nice chat. They like to ride. Chino Hills was where Mama was, and that was started the conversation. He also has 2 daughters in their 20s. I can't remember his name, but can remember that his kids are everything to him, just like me. He wanted to connect with me regarding the sheriff and said how messed up that all was. I kept wringing my wrist, but at the time I couldn't feel enough pain to register that I broke it. Doesn't matter anyways. The medic said he even had to go to LA County Jail once for fireworks. I, of course, got excited about my time in Twin Towers, Los Angeles, or the LA County Jail, and intently listened to his story. He was put there for 11 days for putting baking soda and vinegar in a 2-liter and shaking it as a kid. He was transferred twice. They do that to justify extra county employees. They transfer prisoners back and forth. Dirty little secret. He witnessed a racial fight and on the bus for over an hour and was told to keep quiet while they arrived back. All for having fun with a loud pop in a bottle. I told him of the time I attended the 5700 block for a week due to a DUI in a national park. My offense might have been a real crime maybe, but my time in there was real hard. While processing, they threw a box of clothes on the shower floor, and you're in a room with maybe 50 guys, all sizes, so we fought for clothes that fit. I got a big enough jumpsuit, but never got underwear. I was the biggest guy in the room with close to 200 inmates. We got to share a bed back to back with another guy. I was on the edge of the blacks and was treated with respect because I offered safety for my race. No one F's with me except little cops, I guess. Ha ha ha. After 5 days in jail, the 2 guards for the 200 of us said, strip down to your drawers and line up. I just stood there and was met with a military treatment. They ordered me to undress down to nothing and stand in line. I did and stood bare-ass naked in a line of men, leading all the blacks. It is funny to say now that we were taken from one part of the jail and marched through every hallway to the clothes on the other side. Through the women's part, all the whites and blacks were telling me, be proud, bro, let it hang. I'm not sure what proper PC is, but the jail is if you're an African American, you're black. By the time we arrived at the hospital, I had connected with the EMT on many levels and hope to see him again. He's a cool guy. When I arrived at the hospital, I joked with the driver, asking if he's ready for the work out lifting me. He laughed, and I asked who was the biggest he has to haul and lift. He said it was a lady like from that show, and it took 4 men to lift her. He got me out, but I knew that was a lot of weight. I was met at the hospital by the ranger. He was looking out for me and saw that I got into the ER. Being wheeled into the ER was not a fun experience. I cannot stand trying to explain what I'm going through to unknowledgeable doctors. I did not have Wendy with me to help, so I was just alone fighting to breathe through a ridiculous mass. There was a nurse attending to me, and he was able to take my blood pressure on my ankle, which was a good change. If I take it on my arm, it causes too much vascular pressure and induces seizures. That was the only good thing that came from the experience, a new way to take my blood pressure. Woohoo! When I was being wheeled in, I was told the head nurse that the doctor is really old, but a good doctor. I noticed that this old man was stumbling out of one of the rooms created by sheets. I thought this doctor is really old, so old he could barely walk. I was not looking forward to talking to him. While lying there for about half an hour, I was just thinking to myself, this is better than jail or that sheriff's car. Because of the timing of everything, I never received any cannabis oil that day and was pretty much disabled by this point, had the retard arm, and my speech was slowing down. When the doctor approached, he said the one thing that I absolutely hate for doctors to say to me, looks like you have some anxiety, right? I said, no, I have damaged hippocampus and frontal lobes. I have seizures and chest pains. The doctor was just looking at me, himself attempting to breathe through the mask. As he was gasping to talk, I caught it. I stopped drinking a couple of years ago. It's because I could smell vodka anywhere. This little mountain hospital in Lake, this is a little hospital in Lake Isabella, but this is still the mountain. So like a true mountain man, I just asked, Doc, you been drinking? He just looked at me and didn't say anything. It was a long pause, and with no response, I said, Doc, I know you've been drinking. I could smell it. He looked at me and asked, what do you want me to do? I replied, is there another doctor that I could talk to? He said, no. So I replied, I'm leaving. I removed the heart monitors myself and started to exit the hospital. While handing out to the door, I said to the head nurse, your doctor's drunk. He looked at me and said to the other nurse, get him out of here. Just as the head nurse said, get him out of here, Wendy was walking up to me. I was so relieved to see her. At first, Wendy was being prevented from being allowed back to see me. And then the doctor came to the door and said, I'm discharging your husband. He thinks I've been drinking and won't accept medication from me. Wendy's response was, well, have you? The doctor then replied, you're welcome to take him. He's right back here waiting for you. The doctor then held the door for Wendy. Right as Wendy approached me, there was a real medical emergency showing up. We both had to jump back for the stretcher that was hauling this guy in. He had no shirt and was strapped down with a brace on his neck, immobilizing his head. He was completely blue. And as she wheeled by, I said, now there's a guy who needs some care. As we left, one of the nurses said to Wendy while nervously resting her hands, I'm so sorry. We were happy to get out of there. However, I never got the blood work needed for the heart issue. I did happen to mention to the two people in the waiting room that the doctor was drunk as me and Wendy headed out to the hospital and back to the Jeep. It was over. We were there together and everything was okay. It was horrifying for both me and my family. I had taken days to get through our own problems of family dealing with my disease. And more so this crazy world. I would now not allow anyone to take my life away from me. This is my choice, and if I decide to die, it never works out anyways. I will never again take a knee for law enforcement. I have figured out a better way to handle that if it occurs. My mom and pop showed up 3 hours later. They're the best. Without their support, I would never have made it this far. They're a strong couple and loved by so many. I sure love you, Eddie and Martha Jane Smith, unconditionally. Okay, I'm gonna keep going for a second. We headed to the Central Coast for a break from crazy and found some inspiration. And I need a lot of cash to self-publish this work. And in true fashion, just in time, Mother Earth is providing a jade to pay for the publication. The magic between me and my beautiful wife is getting stronger. For anyone who is sick, I say with all sincerity, you are blessed. You can heal. You can heal yourself. If brain damage can be worked around, if cancer can be cured, if life can rebound, then so will you. Call your angels and remember, even in sickness, not even, but actually more so. In sickness, we are shown trials to treasures. If you are desperate to find a hand back on a path to balance, I am willing to extend mine. To anyone who is into the spiritual ending, I ask that you see the divinity within yourself. Understand that you're walking and talking complete elemental miracle. 5 elements working together to allow your underlying spirit to inhabit this slow physical plane. Us humans are so important, so powerful. If we ever met here at Sacred Mountain on our street, say howdy. I, with all of my divinity, would proudly give you the blessing of the world of creation. And I'm going to take a break now, but I would like to show you one of my totems in my garden. He's a really cool blue guy. He's blue. I'm going to come back with the final ending in just a minute.